At my day job in communications, every month there's a group meeting with dozens of people. And at the end of the meeting each month, the person who is hosting the meeting asks for a volunteer to host next month's meeting. Now, for months and months, I have this little voice inside of me saying, Chris, you need to speak up. You need to step up and volunteer to host next month's meeting because that is out of your comfort zone. Public speaking is a sort of a fear of mine, and hosting this meeting will help me stretch and grow and become a better communicator. But without fail, every month I would give into negative self-talk and self-doubt, and the other little voice inside me, the discouraging voice, would tell me, you have no business being up there. You're not as knowledgeable. You don't have as much experience, or there's people who are higher up on the table of organization, people who are better and more comfortable making presentations, people who are better at public speaking, and I'm just kind of weird. They don't want somebody who's kind of weird like me speaking in front of the whole group about these important matters to do with the company. But finally, I was able to overcome that discouraging little voice, and I did finally step up and volunteer to lead a meeting. Now, was I a little awkward? Was I a little nervous and self-conscious? Yes. But I practiced and practiced and practiced. And after the meeting, several people came up to me and said they appreciated the way that I conducted the meeting, because at the end of the meeting, I told them that this was out of my comfort zone, that it's something that I had to push myself to do. And a couple of people told me that they don't like public speaking either, and they were inspired by what I said. So what happens, it's human nature to, instead of focusing on the several people who went out of their way to compliment me and say glowing, wonderful things, I focused on the couple people who didn't say anything. And I thought, well, the old imposter syndrome returned and told me that, well, maybe I didn't have any business hosting the meeting. But then a few days later, when I ran into the people who had not said anything to me after the meeting, they also said very complimentary things. So that just goes to show that imposter syndrome never really fully goes away, that it sort of morphs and mutates, and you may conquer it once, but you constantly have to work at it to be in control of it and not let it control you. Now, one of my favorite songs is Sarah McLachlan's Arms of the Angels, and I love the lyric, always some reason to feel not good enough. Now, we creatives, there are so many reasons for us not to feel good enough. We face so many gatekeepers who tell us no, who tell us that we, ourselves, and our work is not good enough. I'm a member of a couple of different mastermind groups for writing and filmmaking, because a lot of these meetings are held on Zoom. That's something that started during the pandemic and has continued. The host of the meeting will ask people who have posted questions in the chat to upvote the questions that they would most like the answers to. So here we are in what is supposed to be a supportive environment where we creatives, most of us are independent filmmakers and self-published authors. We're in a supportive environment where the whole purpose is to connect with like-minded individuals and give ourselves sort of a protective layer from the outside world and the industry gatekeepers. And even this supportive environment turns into a literal popularity contest when the hosts ask people to upvote your questions. It's easy for imposter syndrome to creep back in and to think, well, my question wasn't upvoted, so I must not belong here, and I must not ask good questions, or I must ask stupid questions, so I really don't belong here. But again, you have to not let imposter syndrome get the best of you. Keep asking questions. And if I were hosting a group like that, I would simply choose questions randomly or have it be first come, first served, rather than making people feel like they're not good enough because their question didn't get chosen by the rest of the group. Another huge area that can trigger imposter syndrome is social media. Now, as creatives, we need social media, not only to reach out with people who may be our potential target audience for our books, our movies, our plays, whatever it is we create, but to also go on social media and to support other people's work. It's important not to just be a taker, but to give as well, to give support. But as is human nature, like many people, I find myself comparing myself to other people. It's seemingly as soon as they post something, it goes viral and they get several likes and shares and or even hundreds of likes and, numerous shares. And then something that I post gets kind of not quite crickets, but it'll get a few tepid likes and maybe a comment or two, but certainly doesn't get the enthusiastic response that I see other people getting. So once again, it's easy to let imposter syndrome creep in and think, well, maybe people really don't like me. Maybe I'm not meant to be someone who's a creative and puts art out into the world because people don't seem to respond to it or respond to me. But something I'm learning is that if you're looking for external validation, you may not always get it. Some people on social media choose to be creepers, meaning they choose not to comment and they choose not to make themselves visible. But if you maybe happen to run into them in real life, and this has happened to me, people said, "Oh, I liked your post about your book or your movie or the Lady Wrestler documentary. That sounds really interesting." So sometimes we also have to realize that if we're not getting a lot of engagement on social media, it's because we have fallen out of people's algorithms. We're not necessarily the top of their feed because we post infrequently. Now, we should not neglect our social media. We should not neglect our websites because those are platforms that help us bring awareness to our work. But if you're not getting a lot of engagement on social media, rather than letting that trigger that horrible imposter syndrome, look at it as you are busy living your life and keeping your nose to the grindstone, doing your work. And that's a good thing. If you like this video, please leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to my channel.